basically we hire people that are, and I don't want to use the term googly because it means anything to anybody, but just be nice, right? Like be kind to others, know when you have a limitation and ask for help.
Thank you, Herman, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Would you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about myself. So look, I'm German Vega. I'm originally from Costa Rica. I'm currently working at Google's business operations strategy team. And you can think about the team as the internal management consulting division across Alphabet. Before joining this team, I spent around 8 years in management consulting in different positions and different types of capabilities. But my entire career has been primarily focused on margin improvement, whether it's improving price points and launching new products for our clients, as well as improving the cost baseline to improve margin for countries and companies across different industries. At Google, I focus primarily on pricing and monetization across all of Alphabet's different divisions. So any from YouTube to our ads division to Pixel to Nest, I work on that and actively partner with multiple cross-functional stakeholders to make sure they have the right business models and the right strategy to monetize with different devices or services.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So this is one of the questions that I asked, but what was your first reaction when you got the job offer from Google?
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, I really couldn't believe it. And I know a lot of people probably say, "Well, I couldn't believe it got the offer from Google, right?" Like, but like to be like very transparent, I felt that I didn't do a very good interview. The interviewer was, I would say, not very easy to read. And on top of that, my prior round, I kind of felt that I didn't do a good job at interviewing anyway. But it ultimately ended up coming to this decision where Google as a company is looking for a base set of skills. And I had that base set of skills. So when I got the job offer, I felt like, well, I actually did pretty good. And I should have been a little bit more, I would say, confident with myself.
Mm.
But as soon as I got the job offer and I got like all the different statements, I signed probably like within 15 minutes of it. So it was exactly what I was looking for. And I'm glad I did that.
It's always kind of hard, especially when the interviewer is like little hard to read.
Yeah.
That's something that I struggled also.
I'm a hard to read interviewer myself. So that probably brought that on myself. Payback and karma.
Yeah. I kind of want to ask you around like your career journey as well. Like I'm checking your LinkedIn profile here. It seems like you actually went into Charles Schwab for about a year. Why did you decide to leave consulting after such a long time to join Charles Schwab? And what was the reason to leave?
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple of things that made me move out of consulting and into Schwab, and then ultimately made me take the decision to move into a totally different direction. So again, like my background in consulting was primarily margin improvement, but the main focus of my career was financial services. I believe I did consulting engagements for around 8 different banks across 3 different continents. And I naturally felt that a exit for me was to become a subject matter expert in banking strategy with a long-term focus in Latin America, but a near-term focus in the North American market. At this point in time, we're looking into the onset of COVID. As you probably remember, stock markets were quite volatile at that point in time. And I was very passionate with this idea of working towards financial inclusion to make people more, I would say, willing to invest for their long-term potential. Because of that, I made the decision to join the internal strategy group of Charles Schwab.
Mm.
It felt like a very interesting way to start getting into that, right, like financial education aspect that I wanted in my career. But what I learned is that there are parts of me that are more industry agnostic than that passion that I have for financial inclusion. I
Mhm.
felt that for me, I am not somebody that's very hierarchical. I like to have my opinion voiced over. I want to make sure that the junior people in my team also have their opinion voiced over. And it didn't really feel like I was getting that experience at Charles Schwab. Because
Mm.
of that, I moved to making a career jump actually very quickly. And I know that a lot of people like are probably watching this and say, "Oh, like you left within like 6 months or 8 months." It's actually okay if you don't feel that something is going your direction. And to me, it felt like it was not the right career move, and that I wanted to get out and do something different. And between the different options that I had at my disposal, one was going back into management consulting, and I did have an offer from a few employers in that regard, or do something totally different and take a risk. And again, like to me, I'm somebody that has been jumping around different industries for his entire career. And I knew that going back into consulting was my comfort zone and wouldn't allow me to grow into something different. Plus, joining Google also allowed me to touch upon these financial education aspects that I think are very critical through other parts of the company. Google is ginormous. We do a lot of different things. And it is not something totally exclusive from that long-term career aspiration that I have and that will eventually get back to at some point.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I mean, it's not like a random company, it's Google too. So
Like a lot of resources and lots of appetite to take risks in
for
areas
sure.
that are underinvested by other companies.
For sure, for sure. I'm kind of curious. So, what was your process of getting into Google?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would like to decouple the recruiting from my team from like the general, right, like recruiting that happens at Google for like any general strategy and operations roles. So kind of like the TLDR here is like Google has multiple different strategy and operations teams. Most strategy and operations teams sit within a product division, right? Think Pixel has strategy team, Fitbit has a strategy team and whatnot. My team actually sits outside of that entire ecosystem, reports upwards into finance. So we're like totally agnostic in a third party point of view. Because of that, my team does have a very different, right, like recruiting process from the rest of the company. But like overall, I ended up applying to a strategy role within the devices ecosystem. And when the recruiter looked up at my profile, they said, well, like great experience. However, you kind of seem like a better fit for this like cross product area, cross functional strategy division that we have called BizOps. And then this recruiter put me in touch with another recruiter from this specific division. We spoke about it on the phone for a couple of times. It kind of made sense. I really enjoyed the work that they were doing and ended up applying after this recruiter invited me to do so. And the process was quite seamless. 2 rounds of interviews, very resemblant to what a traditional consulting interview process was like. Behavioral plus case in the first round, and then a very extensive behavioral plus a quick case with the head of our team, the vice president of business operations strategy. So again, very resemblant to consulting, probably not very comparable to how other areas of Google recruit, but at least that's how my team would like to do it, especially because a ton of people in my work are former consultants and have that background.
Interesting. So it was only 2 rounds.
It was only 2 rounds. Yeah.
With only 2 people.
So it was 3 people. So round 1 was 2 different interviewers.
Oh, okay.
The final round was just with a VP. Now I do want to call out that we, again, like because we don't want to come off as like a very hierarchical organization, people from your same level as well as levels below will interview you, and that whether or not you're a viable candidate for the org. It is not just about having the bosses like you. It's the people that are working with you and potentially for you have to say, you know what, like Herman's actually a decent human being. We'd be more than happy to have him work with us.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And in terms of the total timeline, like how long did it take from you to actually apply to get the job offer?
Yeah, so I would say interviews happened really quickly. I applied and had an interview within, I would say, a week. However, because Google does have, or at least at that point in time, had a hiring committee requirement for this specific job posting, I needed to wait until the next hiring committee, and that took around 2 weeks. And then after that, I got my offer back. So I would say like total time was around 5 to 6 weeks if you count that I was a recruiter of a different organization and referred me back.
Pretty normal. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. On your LinkedIn profile, it says you're in business operations and strategy, and you kind of work cross-functionally, not in a single kind of product group. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, totally. So this is like one of those teams where like people don't really know what they do until like you're there. It's like a bunch of different things. And I'll talk first about what my broader team does, then I can give you a couple of snippets as the type of projects that I've been doing recently. And if we can like double click on any of these, but like TLDR, look, like my team does 3 things, right? Because we're former consultants, so it needs to be 3 things, not 2, not 4. They have to be 3. Pricing. So basically, my team is the one that says pricing across the entire output organization. So anytime, let's say, Pixel wants to launch a new product to market, like the Pixel 7 that should be coming out later this year, my team will approve the price point that SI will have on their shelves. Okay? 2. The team does a little bit of health strategy. So this is in like 2 different verticals. Either it's mental health, like figuring out what we want to do, right, going forward as an organization. And then 2, anything Fitbit related, because it is sort of, right, like healthcare in some sort of way, shape, or form. And then 3, another kind of like big area called core, where we do a lot of like building capabilities for Google as most general, right, like strategy projects that could come across. Specifically in my experiences around the first, right, like bucket of pricing and monetization. Some of the work that I've been doing in the past, I don't know, like 8 months or so has been figuring out how we should either launch or reboot our mobile phone plans from Google Fi. So that was basically, we have X number of plans. Should we add one more? Should we remove one? And if so, what price point should we set to continue to develop, right, like a relationship with our subscribers? For those that are familiar with Google Fi, there was a price cut that was conducted earlier this year. I was a person that recommended those specific price points. and my organization worked hand in hand with the Googlify leadership to make that happen. On top of that, there's I would say more generic projects. I did a very interesting research around the value of iMessage and the impact that it can have to US consumers with a specific focus on Gen Zers and teenagers. And a lot of it was like literally serving teenagers or getting their reactions as to what does it feel like when you show up as a green bubble in your friends' iPhones chats. What would you do to make that better? Are you willing to pay more for a device? Those types of things. And how I set up recommendations for our C-suite level executives around that. And currently, I'm actually doing a project for Fitbit, figuring out a new product that they should launch to market, and if so, what's the right business model for it. So again, it varies, it goes project by project, but overall, it's around cross-product area related work where there is senior level endorsement, and there is a very thorny question around how do we monetize a product or how do we grow into another market.
It's really interesting because I've actually read the article around like Gen Zs with FOMO around the green bubble versus blue bubble and like iMessage and stuff. And like, it's really interesting to see someone who actually worked on that stuff and like on the Google perspective.
Yeah. And a lot of his stuff, like it went up to Hiroshi, and for those that are like watching this, they're probably familiar with our head of platforms and ecosystems. He constantly tweets about the green bubble and blue bubble. And he was actually the sponsor of this project, and like went through our like list of different insights and now reacting on it internally.
It seems like you work on, multiple different stuff. Do you work on like one project and then it's done, and then do you work on another project and it's done, or do you kind of work on multiple projects at the same time?
I think that depends, kind of like typical consulting / business school answer. It mostly depends on like the level in which you're in. If you come in, let's say, an associate or like junior entry level position in my team, you're likely going to be staffed in one project at a time, working on one specific work stream at a time. Once you start getting more seasoned and have more experience, or coming at a higher level, the expectation is for you to oversee multiple projects with multiple different associates. So in my specific circumstance, I'm more on the latter, right? Like overseeing multiple different things at a time, which is why I have to like constantly pivot from one project that could be related to like, I don't know, telecom, and then also be able to address a senior leader that is talking about like, what do we do about kids with iPhones?
Like, I know that you've been doing like management consulting before in Deloitte, and I think you said it was mostly for financial services.
Yep.
And I would assume that it's very different from what you do now. So was there any sort of learning curve in terms of like, just like the new industry, new product, just learning curve in general? Like, how were you able to overcome those?
Yeah, I would say that there's like two different types of learning curves that happen here. There's a learning curve around the base set of skills to do the job, and then there's a learning curve around the product and Google specific aspects that you need to know to be successful. With the first around like the core skills, a lot of that was things that I had solidified during my 8+ years in management consulting, storytelling, executive presence, being able to do like very deep analysis on specific topics. Like those things were skills that I didn't really feel that I needed to continue improving as I joined, right, like the Google team. However, the product specific stuff is where you do experience some sort of learning curve. When I joined Google, I had absolutely no idea how Google Fi worked, for instance, and I had no experience doing telecom before. And even for Google, this is a small part of the business, right? It's not our ads division, but it's ginormous. It represents like 80+% of our revenue. So you do have a learning curve there. However, what I do want to call out is that a lot of these products are things that we use in our daily life. So before joining this, I was already a Google Fi user, so I knew a little bit about it as a consumer. And a lot of the work that I tend to do is also about things that I use in real life. Like iMessage and like messaging is something real to me. I use it every day. So I know a little bit about that from personal life. That eases my learning.
That definitely helps. And like just knowing it from a consumer perspective also helps too. Like in terms of like learning curves, and then like, the company kind of provide you resources or like training and those kind of stuff.
Yeah. So because I am part of the pricing team has a specific set of tools and techniques that I would say are preferred when you're doing the type of work that we do. We do have training materials for that. And to be like completely honest, I had never run any of these types of analysis before I joined this team couple of months ago. So there was a little bit of a learning curve to pick up the different tools and techniques, but we do have like tons of presentations, like live materials, like books. And of course, like our leadership team is quite accessible and very willing to sit down with you and tell you, you know what, Herman, like here's how you run these specific analyses. And here's a few examples from past work that you can use as a way to get inspired in how to do whatever you're doing right now.
That makes total sense. And that's super helpful. Leadership being accessible and open. What do you like the most and what do you like the least about your role?
what I like the most about my role, I would say, because I'm somebody that likes to jump around and do different things, right? And I get bored very quickly. The ability to just navigate across the entire Alphabet organization continues to motivate me. I don't think that I will ever see two projects that are exactly the same during my lifetime here. And that continues to motivate me to learn, right, on every single day in every single thing that I am doing. Now, for somebody like me, that's actually great. What I don't like about my job, because this could be contentious, but I am somebody that really enjoys going to the office, right? Like I
Ah.
like the model. I love the idea of working from home. I'm currently working from home. My dog is next to me, and I love that. Sometimes there are things that are better done in person. And what I have felt is that there are some specific types of situations where they're better done at a, let's say, local in-office presence. And those things make it a little bit more difficult to navigate. The company is great at making sure we've got the right equipment to do so. So something I love to do is to whiteboard and problem solve for my team. Now the company has installed these Jamboards across multiple different conference rooms in all of the offices. So you could actually replicate a whiteboarding experience while everybody is sitting in the comfort of their homes and you're in an office setting. So again, things are, let's say, improving in that sense. But for me, the in-office, I would say, experience is something that I miss and that I would love to see a little bit more of.
I 100% agree with you because like I've recently moved to a new team and like I didn't really realize before when I was like in my team before where I used to be in like 2.5 years and like I knew everyone and all that, but like just jumping into a new team, like not
Yeah,
knowing anyone and like not know and like I also like moved
it is tough.
from like a retail side to a financial services kind of role. Like I have no idea like and like it helps so much if especially if you're in like office with people and like and communication also is so much easier because like when you're typing something you don't know how this person is like the expression and all that, so yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I
Yeah.
did start both of my prior jobs during COVID, fully remote, and the experience onboarding here was, I would say, a lot more seamless. And I
Mm,
feel that I've been able to build like actual strong relationship with my team members here.
that's good. Yeah. Hey, it's already my last question, but advice for those who want to join Google as a BizOps manager or BizOps role.
Yeah, I would say just a couple of things from a should I even apply, right, perspective? My response is yes, right? Like if you like this type of work and you see yourself doing these types of projects with the people that are in these types of organizations, like definitely please reach out to me or to anybody in my team. And we'd be more than happy, right, to have a conversation about what we do and figure out if this is something that could be good for you. From a what type of skills should I be preparing for in case I wanted to make that jump? It's anything that you would see as necessary to be successful in a consulting role, right? Being able to communicate, have good presence, problem solve, and most importantly, just like be yourself, right? Like we have a rule that is basically we hire people that are, and I don't want to use the term googly because it means anything to anybody, but just be nice, right? Like be kind to others, know when you have a limitation and ask for help. If you can demonstrate these things, then this is definitely the role for you.
Awesome, Herman. That was it for today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the time and the insight. Really
And
appreciate it. Yeah.